Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Cade McAllister rolled into Tampa with a trailer full of high-end gear, he expected a quiet warehouse and a busy sales weekend. What he found instead? A hostile takeover by an overzealous HOA, a forged signature from a dead man, and the start of the wildest suburban showdown ever. I got back to Tampa around 9 in the morning, hauling a trailer full of high-end camping gear, portable generators, and collapsible grills. It had been a productive trip. I'd struck a deal with a supplier in Tennessee that was going to boost my seasonal inventory by 30%. As I turned off the highway and pulled into the industrial road leading to my warehouse, I was already running a mental checklist of unloading, restocking, and prepping for the big weekend sale. That list evaporated the second I saw the parking lot. There were folding chairs, not mine, bright blue aluminum-framed loungers, the kind your HOA aunt brings to a potluck. Next to them were stacks of plastic bins, garlands spilling out like holiday entrails. I slowed the truck, eyes narrowing. Then I saw the kicker, a small printed sign zip-tied to the front gate. This facility is generously provided for HOA Harbor Crest community use by agreement with the owner. My name wasn't on that sign, no signature, just bold audacity. I parked, jumped out, and took a walk around. 2 aluminum fishing boats sitting on rusty trailers blocked the loading dock. A folding table leaned against my wall with a handwritten note, "Do not touch. Reserved for Summerfest." The warehouse door was closed, but not locked, just loosely latched. My stomach turned. I pushed it open. Inside, chaos. One of the aisles where I kept my generators was now clogged with what looked like stage props, a plastic flamingo, 3 deflated bounce house walls, cardboard pirate swords. And then I saw something that made me laugh, bitterly. A camouflage ATV, caked in mud, parked right next to my forklift. That wasn't just a violation of space. That was someone's personal toy, just casually dumped in my building. The cameras. Thank God I'd installed 4 Ultra HD security cameras, 2 indoor, 2 outdoor, linked to a live feed server. I pulled out my phone and opened the app. The last week's footage showed everything, neatly time-stamped. A woman with sharp blonde hair, sunglasses on her forehead like a tiara, confidently directing 2 men as they hauled items from pickup trucks and SUVs into my warehouse. No hesitation. No key. They'd waited for the gate to be open and strolled in like it was their backyard. I walked over to the security booth and knocked. Joe, the night guard, blinked at me through the glass. "Hey, Mr. McAllister. You're back early." "Joe," I said, controlling my breathing, "who gave permission to let people dump their yard sale into my warehouse?" He scratched his head. "There was a woman said she was the HOA president from Harbor Crest. She had a paper, looked official, said the building was community property now, belonged to the neighborhood, something like that. I asked to see the paper. Joe handed me a photocopy, a single page with a barely legible signature, supposedly from Jerome Bailey, the man I bought this place from 2 years ago. One small problem, Bailey had died 6 months before the sale. The HOA, or more likely just this Karen, had forged a dead man's approval. I stood there in the heat, fists clenched, surrounded by ghost decorations and folding canopies, realizing that my $4.5 million inventory was now sitting behind piles of HOA trash, and someone had the gall to print a sign calling this generous. I didn't scream. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. I had a better plan, and it started with photographing every square inch of this invasion. I spent the next few hours cataloging the insanity. Every box, every folding chair, every suspiciously moldy garden gnome got its photo taken, time-stamped, and logged into a spreadsheet. I moved methodically, aisle by aisle, documenting how far this HOA infestation had spread. It wasn't just a few misplaced items, they had taken over. Whoever dumped this garbage did so with the same confidence as a dog marking territory. To keep it clean for legal purposes, I called in a notary public I'd worked with before. Diane, a no-nonsense woman who once helped me mediate a contract dispute with a vendor who tried to pass off knockoff solar panels. She showed up within the hour, clipboard in hand, eyebrow already raised. "This your inventory?" she asked, scanning the room. "About half of it," I replied. "The other half belongs to a suburban coup d'etat." Together, we documented everything. Diane notarized a full itemized report with time, location, and clear notes identifying which items belonged to my registered business inventory and which obviously didn't. She also certified that the building was solely owned by me, backed up by my property deed and purchase documentation. When she left, I had an airtight packet that any judge in the county would take seriously. Then I made a phone call to my operations guy, Manuel. "I need you to prep our liquidation ops protocol," I said. "Yep, everything. Pop-up flash sale, email blast. Wholesale lots." "You mean the stuff you brought back from Tennessee?" "No," I said with a grin. "Everything." By the end of that day, we had a strategy in motion, a one-day-only cash-in-hand, first-come, first-served clearance event for dealers, outfitters, and retailers. It wasn't illegal. This was my property, my registered inventory. And all those sleeping bags, camp stoves, trail coolers, solar packs, they were just collecting dust under plastic pumpkins and HOA-themed banners. I made a few calls to local buyers, the kind who didn't mind showing up fast with unmarked vans and big wallets. The kind of people who know the value of a 10-pack of portable inverters with tags still on. Word spread quickly. Meanwhile, I dealt with the HOA clutter. I didn't touch a single item beyond moving it into one isolated corner of the warehouse. I posted a large laminated sign above it. "Lost and unclaimed property in Slame by end of day." I took pictures of that too and added it to the folder labeled CYA. "Sire, cover your assets." By noon, the next day, the real fun began. Trucks started pulling in. Buyers walked the floor with checklists and barcode scanners. I didn't haggle. I didn't negotiate. If someone waived a contract and had a certified business number, I sold. Generators were gone first. All 50 units snapped up in under 2 hours. Then the portable showers, the industrial-grade water filters, the compact emergency shelters. Gone. 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 By 6 that evening, the warehouse looked like a hurricane had passed through, and I was sitting in a folding chair of my own. Mine, mind you, drinking a bottle of cold root beer, looking over receipts that totaled just north of $3.2 million. That's when I heard the tires screech. A white Lexus SUV, tinted windows, HOA sticker on the back, pulled into the lot like it was being chased. Out jumped Karen. I didn't need an introduction. Blonde bob. Pearls. That stiff posture like she was about to issue a parking citation. Her eyes widened as she looked at the empty warehouse floor. "Where is it?" she snapped. "Where's our stuff?" "You mean the pile of rusty deck chairs and plastic Santas?" I asked. "Still here." I gestured toward the corner. "Your other stuff never belonged to you. You stole it. You're a thief." "That was HOA property," she shouted. "No," I said calmly. "This is my building. This is my inventory. You trespassed. You forged a document from a dead man. And you're about one temper tantrum away from being escorted off the premises." She froze, mouth opening and closing like a fish. I stood. "There are cameras. There are witnesses. And there's a notarized inventory report. Your junk's in the corner. Claim it by tonight, or I donate it to Goodwill and write off the tax." Karen's face flushed so red I thought she might combust. She stormed out without another word. That root beer tasted even better after she left. The day after Karen's little parking lot meltdown, I got an envelope in the mail. Certified delivery return address, a boutique law firm in Clearwater known for representing snooty country clubs and overreaching HOAs. Inside was a formal notice of legal action. Harbor Crest HOA was suing me. I read the first paragraph out loud, mostly for the benefit of the warehouse cat Rufus, who blinked once and went back to sleep. Unlawful disposition of shared community assets, willful destruction of HOA property, obstruction of communal function. It just kept going. By the third page, they were demanding $750,000 in damages and something about forced easement of the property for future community use. I didn't slam the envelope down. I laughed. A long, full-bellied, slightly unhinged laugh that probably concerned Rufus. Then I made a call to the best damn attorney I knew, Janice Thorne, former Navy JAG, now the kind of real estate and civil litigation lawyer that made developers cry. She showed up at the warehouse with an iced Americano, steel gray suit, and a laptop already open. "Let me guess," she said, not even looking up. "Some HOA got drunk on their bylaws again." I handed her the envelope. She skimmed it in 30 seconds, then shook her head. "This reads like a bad high school civics project. You're being sued for selling your own stuff on your own property because someone else dumped garbage there and tried to squat on it." She looked up. "Tell me you've got receipts." Oh, I've got more than receipts, I said, pulling out the notarized inventory log, the video footage from the security system, and the property deed. I've also got the fake agreement Karen used to claim she had permission, signed by Jerome Bailey. Janice froze. Bailey, the previous owner, died 2 years ago. Her eyebrows went up. So, they forged a dead man's signature to justify illegal occupancy. Yep, she grinned. Let's file a counterclaim. Within 48 hours, we had our own legal response drafted and submitted. Trespass, conversion of property, defamation, forgery. Janice was surgical in her language, citing Florida statutes with the kind of precision that made judges nod and plaintiffs sweat. We attached every piece of evidence, from HD security clips of Karen directing people onto the property, to the notarized documents, to the printed flyers she'd been handing out to neighbors, accusing me of theft. We also included one particularly juicy item, a printed screenshot from the local neighborhood forum where Karen had posted that I illegally liquidated HOA property for personal profit and refused to honor prior agreements. Libelous? You bet. Especially since no such agreement ever existed, and the one she claimed did was, again, signed by a corpse. To keep things tidy, we also had a handwriting expert review the alleged agreement. The conclusion was brutal. The signature was a clumsy imitation, clearly not written by Bailey, and dated well after his death was recorded in county records. Janice handed me the expert's report with a look that could burn through drywall. This woman isn't just delusional, she's reckless. This isn't a civil nuisance anymore. This is felony territory. Think it'll stick? I asked. Oh, it'll stick, she said. And when it does, I hope she enjoys the view from a concrete bench. That evening, I walked around the warehouse one more time, taking stock. The building was empty now, clean, quiet, no HOA remnants in sight. I replaced the parking lot sign with a new one, just black letters on white aluminum, private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Underneath it, in smaller font, no exceptions, no excuses. I wasn't bluffing. We didn't have to wait long for the fireworks. Less than a week after filing our counterclaim, the court scheduled a preliminary hearing. That alone was unusual. Someone had flagged the forgery issue hard enough for the clerk to prioritize it. I wasn't surprised. It's not every day an HOA president forges the signature of a dead man to claim ownership over someone else's warehouse. Karen showed up to court in a cream-colored pantsuit and a smug expression that looked permanently stitched into her face. She was flanked by a man I assumed was her attorney. Slick, thin tie, nervous eyes. Janice leaned over and whispered, "He looks like he bills in desperation, not ours." I barely held in a snort. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with the patience of a rattlesnake, took her seat and opened the file. Her eyes didn't even lift when she asked, "Is the plaintiff present?" Karen stood. "Yes, Your Honor, Karen Danes, president of the Harbor Crest Homeowners Association." "And the defendant?" "I'm Cade McAllister, owner of the property in question." The judge nodded, then flipped through the file. "We're here on a civil claim of unlawful conversion of property and damages, and a counterclaim for trespass, conversion, defamation, and forgery. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Janice said, calm, clear, professional. The judge looked directly at Karen. "Before we proceed, I have one preliminary concern. This exhibit, the alleged letter of authorization from Jerome Bailey. Has your counsel reviewed this?" Karen's lawyer stammered. "Yes, Your Honor, and we believe it to be valid." The judge raised one eyebrow and tapped her pen. "Mr. Bailey died on March 10th, 2021. The document is dated June 5th. That's nearly 3 months post-mortem." Karen opened her mouth, but Janice cut in. "Your Honor, we've submitted handwriting analysis confirming it's a forgery, as well as a certified death certificate from Hillsborough County. Additionally, we have video evidence showing Ms. Danes orchestrating unauthorized entry onto my client's property." The judge held up her hand. "I've seen the footage." She turned to Karen's lawyer. "I'm giving you an opportunity right now to reconsider your approach before this becomes a criminal referral." Silence. Karen's expression was beginning to crack, that rigid smugness giving way to the twitch of someone who's realizing the train she's driving has no brakes. But the real bombshell came later that week, when Janice received a tip from a former HOA board member, anonymously, through a legal contact. The message was simple: check the HOA's finances. With the court now entertaining possible criminal charges, we subpoenaed Harbor Crest HOA's bank records. What we found was worse than we imagined. Over the last 18 months, Karen had been collecting what she called a voluntary storage fee from residents, supposedly to help fund a future clubhouse. In reality, she'd collected over $42,000 in cash contributions, none of which were reported on the HOA's books. Janice's accountant traced multiple deposits directly into Karen's personal checking account and a side community account never disclosed to the HOA treasurer. The kicker? Several payments were made during the exact period when my warehouse was being reclaimed for HOA use. We took it all to the DA. The district attorney's office didn't even blink. The moment they saw the forged document, the forged signature, the security footage, and now the misappropriated funds, they opened a formal investigation into Karen Danes for felony forgery, fraud, and embezzlement. That night, I sat in my warehouse looking at the cavernous space that had nearly been stolen from me and poured myself 2 fingers of good bourbon. I wasn't just going to win a civil case. I was about to watch the entire HOA collapse under the weight of one woman's arrogance. And I wasn't done yet. It didn't take long for the tremors to hit Harbor Crest. The day after the DA opened their case, word started spreading like wildfire through the neighborhood. First came the whispers, emails between residents, suspicious side conversations during HOA lawn inspections. Then came the full-blown panic. By Friday afternoon, I started getting phone calls, not from lawyers, from residents. Mr. McAllister, I'm Mike Rudd from Lot 29. I just wanted to say I had no idea what Karen was doing. If I'd known she forged anything or tried to take over your warehouse... Click, another voicemail. Hi, Cade. It's Lori Phelan. I'm on the HOA gardening committee. Please don't think we're all like her. We never voted on anything about your building. Please, if there's a petition, I'll sign it. Just let us know. I didn't respond. Not yet. I let the silence do the talking. That weekend, the Harbor Crest Board tried to hold a community emergency meeting in the neighborhood's Central Park, which, hilariously, consisted of 3 benches and a rusty swing set. Only about a dozen people showed up. I know because someone filmed the whole thing and uploaded it to a neighborhood Facebook group. The video was glorious. Karen tried to take control of the meeting like nothing was wrong. These attacks are politically motivated, she announced, standing on a picnic table like she was giving a TED Talk on suburban authority. I've been serving this community for 8 years, and I will not be intimidated by malicious outsiders. Someone off camera shouted, "You forged a dead guy's signature, Karen." Another voice chimed in, "Where's the 40 grand, Karen?" That was the moment the HOA board cracked. 2 members stood up and announced they were resigning effective immediately. A third asked publicly whether the HOA even had legal standing to continue operations while under investigation. Karen, visibly shaken, tried to pivot to victimhood, but it was too late. The pitchforks were metaphorical, but the fury was real. Meanwhile, Janice and I were preparing our next move. We filed an emergency motion for a court order to freeze all HOA accounts pending the outcome of both civil and criminal proceedings. That included their operating account, reserve fund, and anything remotely tied to community improvement projects. It passed in one afternoon. No resistance. No judge wanted their name on a headline next to embezzlement scandal ignored. But there was one more piece we needed. We sent a private investigator to knock on a few doors in Harbor Crest, politely, professionally, with a clipboard and a smile. He was there to ask one simple question. Did Karen Danes ever collect cash from you directly for anything HOA related? He didn't have to knock on many. 6 residents admitted to handing her envelopes of money for storage use, equipment upkeep, or upcoming renovation funds. Not one receipt, not one bank record. With that, the fraud case was solid. Janice met with the assistant DA and handed over a tidy binder labeled Danes v. Evidence Vol. Sci. Her words. 2 days later, Karen was arrested. It was quiet. Early morning, no sirens, no spectacle. But someone from the HOA board leaked a photo of her being escorted out of her home in handcuffs, looking like she'd bitten into a lemon and realized it was full of nails. That same day, a court-appointed auditor began reviewing HOA books. What little credibility Harbor Crest had left vanished by sunset. As for me, I showed up at the warehouse, stepped inside, and turned on the lights. Clean, organized, mine again. I updated the passcode on the security gate and replaced the sign above the entryway. It used to say authorized personnel only. Now it said, try it again. I dare you. The fallout didn't just stop at Karen's arrest. It was like someone yanked the pin from a grenade and casually tossed it into the HOA's living room. Over the next few days, residents started peeling away from Harbor Crest's sinking ship like rats who'd finally realized the captain had gone mad long ago. HOA meetings were canceled. The community newsletter stopped being delivered. The official HOA email address started bouncing back with undeliverable. It was like someone pulled the plug on the whole operation, and I wasn't going to pretend I wasn't enjoying every second. But then came the formal motion. Karen's defense team, now 3 lawyers deep and looking like they'd rather be anywhere else, filed a desperate motion to dismiss my counterclaims. Their argument was a train wreck, that Karen's actions were done on behalf of the HOA, that the warehouse had been abandoned, and that any confusion about the property's legal status could have reasonably been misinterpreted. Janice's response? 3 words. Exhibit A, Your Honor. She slid forward the security footage, Karen unlocking my gate with a bolt cutter, Karen directing volunteers to unload boxes labeled HOA event supplies, Karen personally taping up the fake notice that claimed the space had been graciously offered. The judge didn't even let the defense finish. Motion denied. But that wasn't the best part. After court adjourned, we were approached by a well-dressed man in his 50s who introduced himself as a federal postal inspector. He handed Janice a business card and quietly asked for a copy of the flyers Karen had distributed to residents. Did these go through the mail? He asked. They did, Janice said. Thanks. That's mail fraud. I nearly choked on my breath. The cherry on top. The HOA board, meanwhile, was in full collapse mode. 3 more members formally resigned. Residents held a vote, not to replace them, but to dissolve the HOA entirely. I didn't attend the vote, but the result was posted in public within hours. 81% in favor of disbanding Harbor Crest HOA. Now, that was a good number, but one last twist was still brewing. On Tuesday, I got a knock on the door. A woman in business attire, clipboard badge, polite smile. She introduced herself as a claims adjuster with the HOA's insurance provider. I'm here to assess damage, she said. To what? I asked. To the HOA's property stored on your premises. There's a claim pending for property loss. I nearly laughed. You're about 4 weeks late. That junk is long gone. Want photos? I'd appreciate that. So I printed out everything, from the time-stamped pictures of the rusty furniture to the auction receipts to the laminated unclaimed items sign. I even threw in a photo of Karen's ridiculous flyer for fun. She reviewed the stack silently. Then she looked up and said, "Yeah, this claim isn't going anywhere. Thank you, Mr. McAllister." And with that, even the insurance backed away. Word of Karen's downfall had officially spread beyond Harbor Crest. Local media caught wind of the story. A homeowners association president forging documents, misusing community funds, and getting arrested on multiple felony counts? That was catnip for suburban news. A segment aired on a Tampa evening broadcast, complete with B-roll of the busted HOA storage warehouse and a blurred clip of Karen being escorted to a squad car. They titled the story, "The Queen of HOA Scandal." Janice loved that. But while the court process marched forward, there was still the matter of damages. My warehouse hadn't just been trespassed, it had been turned into a dumping ground, and my name had been dragged through the mud. Remember those flyers Karen sent out? One of them claimed that I had secretly liquidated community property and refused lawful cooperation with the board. We were now officially pursuing those statements as defamation per se, which in Florida meant I didn't need to prove harm. The act of falsely accusing someone of criminal behavior was enough. Karen's defense tried to pivot again, this time suggesting I had overreacted, that I should have simply asked for the items to be removed instead of selling my inventory and involving attorneys. Janice countered with a timeline. She pointed to the 5-day span during which Karen's crew actively used my warehouse while I was out of state. She showed the footage again, the signs, the bolt cutters, the ATV. She leaned into the podium and said, "My client didn't overreact. He reacted with remarkable restraint." The judge agreed, especially after we presented a forensic report showing that my inventory, sold in bulk at the warehouse auction, had moved at slightly lower margins due to the rushed timing. Total loss in profit, about $215,000. Add to that the costs of professional cleaning, storage reorganization, and a modest PR firm I had to hire to restore business reputation in my supplier circles. The total damages climbed over $300,000. Karen's personal liability? Still growing, but the knockout blow came from someone I hadn't expected. Jeff Milligan, former HOA vice president, bald, sunburned, looked like he worked construction, because he did. He'd resigned early in the fallout, but quietly kept copies of HOA meeting minutes and emails. He contacted Janice and offered to testify under oath that the board never voted on any use of my warehouse. Karen routinely bypassed board procedure, claiming she had verbal deals with property owners. She bragged about finding space for free and hinted that I'd be too busy to notice. He brought the receipts, literal emails, meeting notes, a voice memo. We sat in court 2 days later as Jeff took the stand. His testimony was direct and calm. When the defense tried to suggest he had a personal grudge, he shrugged and said, "I just don't like fraud, sir." The courtroom was dead silent as the judge reviewed the new evidence. Then she looked up and said, "The court finds this pattern of behavior deeply concerning. We will proceed to formal hearings for damages and punitive sanctions." Karen didn't speak. She just sat there, pale and blinking, like she was watching her house burn down in slow motion. A week later, the formal damages hearing began, and by then, Karen had officially entered the sweating and avoiding eye contact phase of collapse. Her lawyers looked defeated. One had the 1,000-yard stare of a man who just realized his client never had a parachute when they jumped out of the plane. Janice opened strong. She presented our compiled damages with the same precision you'd expect from a military logistics officer, which, fittingly, I used to be. Every dollar was documented. Every incident was time-stamped. Every lie Karen told had a receipt stapled to it. Mr. McAllister's business suffered quantifiable harm, Janice explained, not just from the invasion of his private property, but from the reputational damage caused by Ms. Daines's defamatory publications and willful misrepresentation of authority. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a calculated abuse of perceived power. Karen's team tried, limplier, to argue that the warehouse had no signage saying no trespassing at the time of the occupation. I nearly laughed out loud, but the judge beat me to it. "You entered a locked commercial facility," she said flatly. "That's trespass. It doesn't matter if there's a neon sign or a guy in a suit yelling at you with a bullhorn." Janice went further. She introduced evidence of Karen using HOA funds to purchase catering, not for events, but for board lunches held in her backyard. One receipt was for a seafood boil totaling nearly $2,000, listed under community engagement. Then came the tax filings, or rather, the lack thereof. Turns out Karen hadn't filed a complete set of financial disclosures with the state HOA registry in almost 2 years. She had been operating in a gray area, using community funds like a private purse. The judge looked exhausted. After 2 full days of testimony, witness statements, and document review, the verdict was delivered. The HOA was ordered to pay me $315,000 in restitution, including damages, legal costs, and compensation for reputational harm. But the real hammer dropped when the judge addressed Karen directly. This court is referring the matter of financial misconduct and document forgery to the state attorney's office for felony prosecution. Ms. Daines, you may want to retain separate criminal counsel. Karen opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her throat worked like she was trying to swallow broken glass. Outside the courthouse, a few former HOA members were waiting, not for me, but for each other. I overheard one say, "We need to dissolve it before the state does." That evening, Harbor Crest HOA voted to disband entirely. The vote passed with a landslide. No speeches, no tears, just silence and pens scratching paper. As for me, I had a check in my hand, a lawyer who'd just become a permanent contact in my phone, and a very large, very empty warehouse with nothing in it but potential. But we weren't done yet. A month later, the warehouse didn't just sit idle. I wasn't the type to let 4 concrete walls collect dust, especially not after what they'd been through. I'd been toying with the idea for years, turning one of my storage spaces into something useful during the off-season. And now I had the cash, the clarity, and one hell of a motivator. We launched Rapid Relief Warehouse. It started small: modular shelves, pre-packed emergency kits, palletized units of generators, solar chargers, tents, and first aid boxes. Florida's hurricane season wasn't going anywhere, and I figured if my warehouse had already survived a Category 5 HOA, it could handle a real disaster or two. Within weeks, I had contracts with 2 regional nonprofits, plus a handshake agreement with a disaster response NGO based in Miami. The warehouse transformed, security tightened, logistics software installed. A full-time crew of 6, all veterans, handled daily ops. The place was humming. And on the front wall, above the office door, I installed a huge banner. Remember, storage goes to the owner, not to the HOA. Underneath that, in smaller print, forged signatures, "We'll see you in court." It became a bit of a legend among the disaster logistics crowd. Meanwhile, Karen, her world kept shrinking. The prosecutor's office formally indicted her on 2 felony counts, one for forgery of a legal instrument and one for fraudulent misappropriation of funds. The plea deals were floated. Probation, restitution, suspended time, but Karen, ever delusional, insisted she'd win at trial. That trial lasted 3 days. Her own board members testified against her. Her own email trail sealed the coffin. The sentence, 18 months in state prison plus 2 years probation and full restitution to the HOA, or what was left of it. She was led away in handcuffs again. This time, she didn't look shocked. She just looked tired. The warehouse she'd tried to hijack was now a registered distribution node for state emergency response, and her name was a cautionary tale in legal newsletters and HOA forums statewide. The phrase, "Don't go full Karen," became something of a running joke. I didn't feel sorry for her. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd tried to steal something that didn't belong to her, bullied people into silence, and forged her way into a power trip. She just lost, and I was still standing. It had been 6 months since the last court date when I got the envelope. Thick, cream-colored, embossed seal in the corner. Not a subpoena this time, an invitation. It was from the newly formed Harbor Crest Neighborhood Cooperative, a small, volunteer-led group that rose from the ashes of the dissolved HOA. They weren't a governing body. No rules, no dues, no self-declared overlords. Just neighbors who agreed to work together when it made sense. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Mr. McAllister, we owe you more than one apology. Thank you for not burning the whole place down. We'd be honored if you joined our next meeting as a guest. There's brisket." I chuckled. Left it on the counter. Maybe I'd stop by someday. But life was busy. The warehouse was expanding, and we were now partnered with state emergency services for coastal regions. We even got a visit from the governor's disaster response coordinator. She shook my hand, toured the facility, and asked where the idea came from. I just smiled and said, "Bad neighbors." Still, every now and then, I'd see a familiar face from Harbor Crest driving past the gates. Some waved. A few stopped to drop off thank you notes or just say hello. One brought me banana bread. Apparently, Karen's name had become unmentionable in polite neighborhood conversation, like Voldemort if Voldemort had a clipboard and a forged lease agreement. As for the HOA, what remained of its assets, the patio chairs, the fake ficus trees, the comically dented BBQ trailer, were liquidated through a court-ordered online auction. Proceeds went toward paying down what restitution Karen hadn't covered. I bought back one item for $1 just for laughs. The original laminated flyer she posted on my gate, claiming the warehouse was graciously offered to the HOA. I framed it, hung it in the staff break room just above the coffee pot. Beneath it, I added a plaque that read, "Know it's yours. Guard it like hell." Because in the end, it wasn't about chairs or storage or even money. It was about ownership, of property, of principle, of peace. Karen tried to hijack all 3. And now she was a footnote, a warning, and I had my warehouse, my name, and my freedom all intact